Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a list of some books that I am planning to get around to in April. For the most part, I tried to pick some books that were a little bit on the smaller side for April because this upcoming month is when the remake for Final Fantasy VII comes out that I have been looking forward to for basically half my life. I don't want to dedicate that much time to reading, and I know that it's like sacrilegious to say on a channel about books. That is actually a big reason why the first book I picked is this one, Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. So I've been mentioning that I want to read more Joe Abercrombie. In March, I had planned to pick up another of his adult works. I've read the First Law trilogy. I've heard that the standalones in that world are even better, so I'm going to still try to get through all of those. But I think for this upcoming month, while I still want to continue to read Abercrombie, I just don't want to dedicate as much time. So I'm like, I'm going to pick up one of his young adult books. I've heard this series is pretty good. It often still gets sold in the adult fantasy section, I think because people just associate Joe Abercrombie with grimdark and adult. I've heard pretty good things, but I've heard it's different. It's a little more plot driven is what I've heard than his adult books, which are very character driven. And I really like that element of his adult works. So I think it'll be interesting to see how not only he does with a young adult age range, but also it being more plot driven. I do plan on doing some catching up in April with some of the things from the first 3 months of the year that maybe I haven't quite finished. I'm really bad about actually finishing everything on my monthly TBRs by the end of the month. So I am going to try to be catching up with on some stuff. But for adult fantasy, because I still want to read some adult fantasy, I was looking at my shelves and I was like, what's something that's not a huge time commitment and isn't super beefy, but that I still really want to get to? And I really want to get to The Queen of Blood. This is a pretty small book when it comes to adult fantasy because usually they're monsters. And this one's not, and I've heard fantastic things about it. My friend Joshana from the channel Joshana C, she ended up loving this series. I think every single book was a favorite book of hers from last year. All three of them appeared in her ranking for the best books of 2019. That made me super excited. And I've been wanting this year to, when I pick up a series, if I like it, to try to just keep going with it. So I figured if I like this one and I read it in April, then I can just keep going. Where did I put them? They're right behind me. I can just keep going with the next ones. Next up would be April's buddy read book, and that would be The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. This is a historical fiction World War II story told from the perspective of death. It's actually a reread for me, but for some reason, I don't remember it very well. I remember certain things very vividly, but I don't remember a lot of it very well, and I also never reviewed it. So I really wanted to get back to it. I've been wanting to get around to more historical fiction this year because it's one of my favorite genres and I just don't pick it up enough. This one is quite chunky, but I'm okay with it. I know there was some interesting formatting things in this. For example, at least in my edition, there's something like this. I feel like my husband's read a book called Goodnight Poon Poon, and I feel like that's what he's gonna think of when he sees that. I don't know how many of you just got that reference. I know the perspective of it being from death definitely makes it a little different, and it's definitely a very kind of eccentric. It's not this morbid, dark tone that you would expect from a story told from the perspective of death. Rather, it's kind of observant and curious. If you are wanting to buddy read this with me, I will have a breakdown, not only for this book, but for all of the books, a breakdown of 7 days. You don't have to read it in 7 days, but for those of you that like to try to finish a book in 1 week, that is kind of how I'm going to have it broken up, along with all the other books that I'm mentioning over on the app Bisons. And what I've been doing is, with these buddy reads, my husband also reads the same book. We don't talk about it to each other all month until we're done with it. Then we do a chat, usually toward the beginning of the next month. I'm really excited to see what he thinks of this. But this time around, while we'll still give you our thoughts in vlogs individually, despite not knowing each other's thoughts, I'm going to be the one chatting with all of you over on Bisons. I'm really excited to see what other people think of this because I think it's very true that when something has a very deep, heavy subject matter, that sometimes people are hesitant to critique it or to be critical of it because they feel like they just feel uncomfortable. But I'm a pretty open person, and I know that this book is somewhat divisive. Some people really love it, some people don't like it much at all. So I'm very excited to see what all of you are gonna think of it. Nice thing about Bisons is you don't have to engage with people as
it's happening because you can go back and see it. And with these breakdowns, you don't have to worry about being spoiled. They do have an active chat section, but they also have these areas where if you didn't even want to follow my setup, you can end up making your own and be like, this particular part, and then only people who click on that will see the spoilers for it. I love the app. I think it's fantastic for buddy reading, but it's also great too if you finish a book and then you're wanting to see what other people thought because maybe you just didn't get the chance to write your thoughts down as you went. Maybe you binged a book and then you're like, what do other people think of this? When you select it as read, you can see what other people who have completed it thought of it. The next thing on my TBR would be Spin the Dawn. This just sounds like a good old time. It is an Asian-inspired setting, but apparently it's also kind of like a Project Runway, which I've never really watched that show, but just there's a lot of fashion elements to this story. It's this girl who has to compete in this competition to become the emperor's seamstress or something like that. I've seen some pretty good things about this book, but I just think that the concept is very different, and I'm excited. Last on the list would be King of Scars by Leigh Bardugo. I am finishing up my reread of the Grisha trilogy. I've read the Six of Crows duology, and now I can finally get around to this one. It follows, I don't know if I can say who it follows because it's kind of a spoiler, because it's a character from the Grisha trilogy / Six of Crows, kind of. It's more Crooked Kingdom. But anyway, this is a character that appears in the Grishaverse, and then this is kind of their story. Most of you who watch BookTube probably already know who it is, but just in case, I don't want to say who it is. But it's a character that a lot of people really love, and I wouldn't say I ever really loved this character, but I am excited to see them having their own story because they had a lot of personality, which I think worked really well for a side character. But I don't know how it's going to be as a main character because sometimes those really big personalities, they don't really work for main characters because they don't really feel like a person. It's hard to connect with them. But I'm hoping, because this is a newer work by Leigh Bardugo, and I think often authors get better and better the more they write, I'm hoping that this particular book will get us really deep into this character. I'm excited for it. I might, just to be a completionist, read Language of Thorns also, which is a collection of short stories that I think are supposed to be like the folklore within the Grishaverse, which is pretty cool. I'm not usually a huge folklore person, but I think it's in the style of fairy tales, and the book itself is really stunning, and there's cool detail where in each story you start off with the artwork on the pages, and then it gets more and more and more as the story progresses, which I think is pretty cool. So I think there's little details about this book that could make it a really good companion to King of Scars, especially if once I finish that, I need a little fix of Grishaverse or something. I know that some people love the original trilogy and then don't really care for Six of Crows, and then most people love Six of Crows and then don't love the original trilogy. But I kind of just like this whole world, this whole universe. I just think it's really cool. It's like the young adult version of the Cosmere in a way, not saying that they're the same when it comes to their themes and whatnot, but I just mean to get this huge world and have it expanded on and have these other characters that you sometimes see pop up over here and stuff. I just think it's so fun. It's so easy to immerse yourself in. Completely random last thing I want to mention. I was looking up some anticipated releases of mine for this next season because it's springtime now, and I was like, what's coming out in the springtime that maybe I should be on the lookout for, because I like having a mix of books that are new along with things that have been out for a while, because I think new books, nobody's opinions are formed about them yet, so it's very easy to go in without outside perspectives influencing your thoughts, whether you intend them to or not. So I went to look up what's coming out in April. Nothing's coming out in April, at least from what I could see. So if there's anything coming out in April that you are all really excited about, fill me in. I really want to know. I think Final Fantasy VII is just filling up the space. There's no need for anything else to come out because you don't want to compete. It's too great. Everybody's time is going to be on it. Oh my gosh, I can't wait. That's what I'm planning on reading in April. Let me know what you guys are planning to read this upcoming month. And also, let me know if you're planning on playing Final Fantasy VII. I will have my buddy reading list for the entire year in case you want to mark that for yourself in the description bar, as well as the app itself if you're wanting to pop on over there. But anyway, thanks so much for watching. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Stay healthy, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.